think we need a picture of that. Turn around. That's live, Marty.
Thank you.
Don't use it too loosely.
Appreciate your not asking me to dress up. This is who I am, and I'm still who I am.
Thank God for that. So tonight we're here to actually hear some stories from you, Marty, about how this place came to be, how you got into the gay club business. It's an amazing story. I just actually want to start by saying I actually only met Marty for the first time 1 week ago. I came to meet him at one of his other clubs, one of his other restaurants, Jake's, at 4 o'clock, preparing to leave around 5 o'clock. Figured, what's there to say? We opened a club. At 7 o'clock that night, I finally looked at my watch and said, Marty, I have to get out of here. The sun's setting and I'm on my bike. And you remember what you said? I have a car. We'll throw your bike in the back of my car. We're finishing this conversation. So I also want to invite everyone in here to have questions. As soon as we're done schmoozing, we're going to open it up and really have some lively conversations. But if something's burning, if you want to push on something that Marty's talking about, flap your hands, and we've got another mic that can go around and pick up your question. I did a little bit of research. You're very crafty. There's not a lot out there about you, Marty. Probably for good reason.
I like to keep a low profile.
So to speak. You have a big gay nightclub. I don't know how low profile you can be. Can you talk a little bit about where you're from? I got Brooklyn. I got
quick background. Yeah, born in Brooklyn. Great place to be from. You get an interesting education. You learn how to hustle on the streets pretty well. And by the time I got out to Colorado, I sort of felt I had to step up. I was grounded on the streets, and suddenly here I was in a kinder, gentler place, and it seemed like kind of easy pickings, actually, to a New York Jew.
Yes, naive Coloradans, right?
I went to the University of Denver in 1959, majored in mathematics and statistics. I was a Sputnik baby, woke up one morning, beep, beep, beep. Oh, darn, everybody better start studying science and mathematics, as did I. Went out to Los Angeles for 5 years, was an engineer, hated every minute of it. Just hated trying to prove why I existed, writing reports, daily reports, weekly, monthly. It just was not what I wanted to do with my life. I'm more of a people person, so I wound up getting an opportunity to come back to Colorado with Ball Brothers in Boulder for a year, and totally accidentally, wound up in the bar business.
Do you want to tell that story in brief? It's an amazing story. I got the not brief version of it.
I'll give you the very short version, but essentially as a real estate broker in Colorado, I had done, just like everybody in LA becomes a real estate salesman or broker, I too became one, and very quickly learned that when I showed a house to a woman who said, "Oh, it's perfect, but it's a blue wall and I want a yellow," I said, "I'm in the wrong business. Let me get on the commercial end of this." And as a commercial real estate person back in Colorado, I had a client who wanted a Formica kitchen cabinet factory, and thinking I'm a step smarter than the average guy, instead of looking at multi-list, I decided, where would I put a factory? Why don't I go to the closest bar to that area and talk to the bartender? These guys know everything. Turned out I met the owner, said, "I'm looking for some real estate." He says, "Right here." No, you don't understand. I'm not looking for a bar. He says, "You're in real estate? Make me an offer." I looked around. There's land, there's a building, there's old equipment. $32,000.
And what year was this again? This was the late 60s?
This was
early
in
70s?
1970.
Okay.
And he turned to me with a little tear in his eye and he said, is there any way you could make that 32.5? Apparently he had a $23,000 mortgage, $9,500 in current bills, and he just wanted to walk away with his head up high. I said yes. He reached out his hand. I thought we were going to shake that we had a deal, and the set of keys was inside his hand. He turned, he walked to the door, got to the coat rack, put on his coat, and never stepped foot into place again. I turned to the audience and said, I think the next round's on me. I think I just bought this place.
And it wasn't a gay bar at that time. It was just a working class bar.
It was what we call a shot in a beer joint. And I thought that I had gotten a pretty good piece of real estate, a business that maybe was marketable.
And where is this located here in Denver?
This is the Foxhole, my favorite jacket. I resurrected it after 35 years. The strange thing was, I'm not really a bar goer. I'm not a drinker.
Did you ever drink? You keep telling me you never drink.
Not really.
You never drank. Okay.
I've certainly had my fair share of alcohol over the years. But as most everyone here who knows me knows, I'm really not a drinker. And I'm not a dancer. I don't particularly like loud music. I'm pretty tone deaf. Just so listen to me sing some of the old doo-wop songs and you'd really know how tone deaf I am. But here I am, owning a bar, and that's the only job I've ever had in the bar. I don't know how to do anything. The first day somebody asked me, can you make me a scotch and soda? I said, how do you make that? The end result was, I said, well, I'll just do this for enough time until I could sell it.
But you didn't sell it.
Actually, I did. Three different times.
3 different times. And it kept falling back in your hands, eh?
Yeah, it was like a rubber ball. It kept bouncing back to me. Like the boomerang generation right now. You know, they keep.
So you sell it to someone, they go out of business, they come crawling back to you. Can you take it off my hands, kind of thing?
Exactly. I found somebody about 8 months later, after I was able to build up the business a little bit, including a little shtick that I.
How do you build the business up? Like, this is a good story.
Well, those of you who either are in the bar business or know somebody who has been going back numbers of years before POS systems and such, probably heard some stories about sales where you'd sell a drink and it'd go in the register, and the next one you'd sell and it'd go in your pocket and such. So by the time somebody was selling a bar, there was always the question, well, can I see the real books? And of course, anybody who has 2 sets of books is just asking for absolute trouble. And I was not looking to be in the bar business. I was not looking to make money. I was not looking to cheat the tax man or anything like that. I had a different goal. I wanted to sell and get back into real estate. So maybe I was a little confused. Maybe I didn't understand things, or maybe my Jewish heritage came back. I'm not sure which one. But instead of taking money out of the register at the end of the night and putting it in my pocket, I did it the other way around. I would actually take a $20 bill every single night and put it in the register, ring it up, and my sales suddenly looked a lot better. Now when somebody asked me, can I see your books? I would say, sure. Well, what about the other books? I says, these are the only books I'm showing. These are the books that I pay taxes on. These are the only things you're going to see, and I am not making any further statement. Fortunately, the culture meant that they assumed that there was something different and that it was really much, much better. So 8 months after I bought the bar, I was able to sell it for $30,000, but it was the business only. I got $5,000 down, $25,000 note. I got myself a tenant.
So you owned the property.
I retained ownership of the property.
Okay.
Still do. I'm sorry, that's not true. I don't any longer. We just sold it last year. But
Mazel tov? I don't know.
Yes,
Okay,
definitely. I won't say what we sold it for, but it was more than $32,500.
Mazel tov, definitely. So how did you get into how does this become Foxhole?
Well, fast forward, the new buyer operated for about a year, defaulted. I had to foreclose, went back in, sold it to a second person. This time a little bit more. I got 35,000 with 10 down. Wound up defaulting, foreclosed, took it over a third time. And when I sold it the third time, the buyer was a reasonably well-known attorney in town, whose name I will not mention, but it turned out that he was closet gay at a time when gay was absolutely in the closet. This is like 76, 77, and this gentleman bought the place, and this time it was 40,000 with 10,000 down.
Creeping up. That's not
better and better.
A little bit. That's 6 years, though.
Well, it's just the business. It's not the property any longer. And I went to opening night, and I walked in my nice restaurant/bar, and I looked at all the wooden panel that had all been painted black. I looked for all the lights. There were none. It was pitch black in there. It took quite a while to get my eyesight focused, and I suddenly noticed, gee, there's whips and chains hanging from the walls. Gee, Toto, we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, you're in Colorado, next door.
But the one thing that stood out in my mind was not the backless chaps that some of the people were wearing. Was not the can of Vaseline on the bar. The thing that stood out in my mind, again, Jewish heritage, was the packed parking lot. I had never seen that many cars there before. And after spending an hour there, I said, boy, I hope this guy defaults and I can foreclose, because I know what I'm doing next.
So wait a minute. You walked into a gay sex club.
Yes.
With chains on the walls,
yes,
black everywhere, and your first thought was, this is a great business.
Absolutely. and those of you who know me know that's exactly the way I looked at it.
I mean, to me, that's amazing. I suspect that many people would have walked in there and freaked out and gotten upset, and you didn't do that.
Not me.
You saw an opportunity. Yeah, I mean, we had talked briefly about whether there was something about having a Jewish background that sort of made you non-judgmental about scenes like that or issues like that. Because this is the 70s. This is Anita Bryant. This is when the Christian right wing was really sort of taking off.
Well, my politics have always been financial conservatism and social liberalism. I believe that anybody has a right to do whatever they want, with whatever they want, however they want, and I just demand that you give me those rights also. And so I can't in good conscience be the crazy character that I am and say it's okay for you to judge me.
Fair enough.
Historically, I shaved my head when I was 27 and started going bald, and people looked at me like I was nuts. So how can I look at somebody who wants to dress up and drag and criticize them? Mm-hmm. No way.
Amen. And this place ended up becoming the Foxhole, yes?
This place did become the Foxhole. It took a year before the default occurred, and what basically happened is the business was solid. I would go there probably once a month thinking this is my future. After years saying, no, I'm in the real estate business. Who would want to be in the bar business their whole life? What a crazy thing. But as I would go there, I saw the business was very substantial, but the attorney had lost interest, and the management was blatantly stealing money. And even though I didn't know very much about the bar, I had run it 3 different times, and it was very clear to me what was going on. And I thought to myself, well, if ever I'm owning this place, I can see 12 people that are not going to be working here. But eventually, there was a default. We did get it back, and I reopened it as the Foxhole, continuing it to be the same kind of club it had been when it had closed.
Which was the gay sex club.
I wouldn't call it a sex club.
What do you think was happening in there?
Well, the sex was going on outside. There was an old phrase, don't come a knocking when you see the van a rocking.
Words of wisdom.
We actually called the Foxhole a fern bar in those days because of its outdoor nature. It was very...
Do you want to describe the club? Because I don't know if everybody in here even knows.
Yeah, the club is pretty tiny. When I first bought it, it was only 2,000 square feet. And I noticed, for example, that people would actually string a net across an old cottonwood tree and play volleyball back there. And I paid a lot of attention to watching these people playing volleyball. And I said, gosh, what a great idea. Not so much because of the physical exertion and athleticism, but gee, I can get a crowd in here in daytime as well as nighttime.
And the
still Jewish, 6,000 years of tradition.
And they were not fully clothed, I'm guessing?
There were shirts and skins, and there was an awful lot of skins.
A lot of skins. Yes, but that became a feature of the Foxhole, having outdoor athletics.
We actually wound up fencing in the yard, and we actually built a regulation volleyball court. And I can't tell you how many people said, "Are you nuts, Marty? Who would want a regulation volleyball court in a gay bar?" Well, it turned out about, I don't know, 23 teams worth. We had huge response on Saturdays all day long, Sundays all day long. We had leagues during weeknights. People would come out as early as 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. Perhaps some of you might remember having played volleyball on the court.
Any of you play volleyball at Foxhole? Anybody?
No.
Oh, we got a couple of people in the back. Remember volleyball. Excellent.
But it was a major attraction and helped the Foxhole become very successful very quickly.
Almost too successful. I mean, how did Tracks end up getting started out of this?
Well, it kind of... Foxhole was not a dance club, although it did have a dance floor and it had a sound system in it that was considered extremely good at that time. Those of you who are really old may remember the old Broadway on 1082 Broadway. It was a gay bar that had gone out of business, and Foxhole wound up buying out their sound system, and we installed it and had a relatively postage-sized dance floor that was always just jam-packed. And when we built the outdoors was 10,000 feet, the indoors was only 2,000. So we had an outdoor dance floor, and even in the middle of winter, there were people that always wanted to go outdoors and dance. And it broke my heart to see 500, 600 people at the end of the night leaving at 2 o'clock and wanting to spend more money and nowhere to do it.
But you came up with a plan for them, didn't you?
Thus far, I've not been involved with Andy's dad, Neil, who was a close personal friend of mine. We belonged to the same club together. He was a phenomenal golfer, and I was attempting. I still haven't succeeded. And we also played a lot of poker together. And being the only two young guys in a club full of a lot of older people, we'd wind up going to dinner together, and he'd come visit me at my bar, and we'd sit down and have a beer together. And there was a piece of property across the street. It was a truck warehouse with a drive-through that was fairly good size and had fairly high ceilings and such, and had a for sale sign on it. And Neil said, well, hey, we ought to buy that place. What would we do with it? Well, we'll just rent it out. Well, we bought it, we rented it out, and a month later our tenant left. Now we're sitting with an empty place, and the thought came, well, what about an after-hours club? We're close to the railroad tracks. It wound up being named Tracks, although that's not really the reason that that name stuck. But, I mean, it's not the reason the name was originally given, but that is the reason the name stuck.
Where did the name originally come from? Then where did the name Tracks originally come from?
Okay, that's a little sideline story, but I'll tell it real quick.
I want to know.
Obviously, a dance club needs a DJ booth. This is the era of DJs and such, and I came up with a great idea of building an elevated DJ booth that would look down on the dance floor. Those of you from the old Tracks would remember what the DJ booth looked like. And in my original design, I came up with what I thought was a unique idea. Instead of just being a DJ booth with a fascia on it, why don't we get the fascia from a big semi-truck, since it was a trucking warehouse, and have the lights flash on and off, low beams, high beams, have a big whistle that the DJ could blow, woo, woo, The turntables would be where the steering wheel was, and of course the one thing that I loved was that the manufacturer of the truck would be Peterbilt. It never happened. It was a great idea, but logistically we couldn't fit all the equipment we needed in there because we were doing something unique with lighting. And we needed a computer, which in those days was a fairly large piece of equipment. And we were going to control our light show with a computer.
This is in what? Like
1980. A computer? Before that was the age of disco. And disco had lights that would whirl and flash and rotate, and there would be helicopters with lights on the paddles of the helicopter, or police beacons that spun around and such. And all of those were controlled by a switch that went on and off. So the person in the booth flipped the switch whenever he wanted the special effect. We were fortunate. I had two characters, one who I'm still associated with all of these years now in Bayfield, Colorado, named Bill Schultz, and another character named Crash Craddock, not the singer, the character. And these two guys convinced me to put a grid system in the ceiling with electricity controlled from a computer. And what you would do is you would program what they called a scene. And this is, those of you who might have theatrical background know about scenes. So we were basically using a theatrical concept to affect an individual scene. And maybe that scene would be one light that was illuminated and every other outlet in the room had no power to it. And then a second later, maybe a joining light would go on and everything else would have no power. And a second later, another light would go on. And hence I could make the lights move across the ceiling. And either it was a grid system, so with a minimum of creativity, we were able to make all sorts of different effects happen. Then we started putting in some of these old disco fixtures into the lights, and we're able to create a timing that was very much advanced from the old flip switch on, flip switch off, because the on and off was controlled by whether the computer was allowing power to go to that outlet. Totally unique concept. I remember when we went to buy the grid system and the programming for the scenes from Klieg Lights out of Brooklyn, they told us it had to be certified funds on the spot because we were crazy. Nobody had ever done this before.
So really, you guys were the first to invent computerized lighting?
To the best of my knowledge, we were the first to apply theatrical lighting grids to a disco-type nightclub.
And that's how it got the name Tracks?
Well, the Tracks actually came from...
Or was that musical Tracks?
Well, it was originally called Trucker's Lounge, based on the architect having no other knowledge other than my drawing of the Peterbilt fascia. And he decided, for lack of anything, to call it Trucker's Lounge, which became Truckers, which became Trucks, which became Tracks. And when it finally got the name Tracks, it made so much sense. We were close to the railroad tracks. The records that we played were all tracks. And unfortunately, the drug use maybe had a little tracks to it also.
I'll let you say that. So Tracks opened in 1980, yes?
It opened in 1980 across the street from the Foxhole as an after-hours club.
And after-hours means no alcohol is sold?
No alcohol.
So how do you make money at an after-hours club?
I didn't quite think of that at the time. It seemed like a great idea, and I learned very quickly that the way you make money in an after-hours club is by selling drugs. I chose no. I was not going to do that. We hoped that we would do well being able to offer a high-tech, high-energy dance environment to as many as 1,000 people who all did not want to go home at the end of Friday night and Saturday night. Unfortunately, the market limited itself at about a $5 cover charge, and even though we had a chance to maybe gross $5 a night, and some nights were 300-400 people, some nights were 600 people, but between the cost of operation, the cost of the equipment, the cost of the building and such, we were barely hanging on. It was just not very profitable with no upside. And we were faced with the dilemma what to do, and we chose, why don't we just make it a regular nightclub? We have the capacity to serve alcohol very easily. It was built with the idea that there would be special events that would be alcohol events. Why don't we just change it into a regular bar? And people said, well, you're crazy again. I've heard that a lot.
That you were crazy?
Why would you take a successful Foxhole and then build a competing bar right across the street, train half of your audience so that instead of a great party at the Foxhole, there'll now be a crummy party in 2 different places, and both of them will die? Well, fortunately, with 31 years of vision backwards, I can safely say that isn't the way it happened. People started saying, I don't know what I'm in the mood for, whether it's an outdoor place, whether it's a good sound system, whether it's volleyball, or whether I'm interested in high-tech, high-energy dance environment. But I know I'm driving down to the bottoms. So.
Can you talk a little bit about this? So, for those of you who can't see this, I am holding something that's called the Tracks Express, Volume 1, May 1983. Looks like a newsletter.
It is.
What's with you guys? What is it with a gay dance club putting out a newsletter? Can you talk to me about that? There's calendars in here of events, articles. What's
Don't forget the Hot to Trot list on the back.
Ooh, hold on. There's a Hot to Trot list on the back. You can explain what the Hot to Trot list is.
Well,
in a second.
I'll explain that first.
Hot to Trot.
We at Tracks prided ourselves on playing the absolute cutting-edge music. You heard music first at Tracks. Before it was on the radio, before it was in record stores, we had DJs who would scour European publishers for what the latest thing was. We were on the marketing list so that when somebody was considering putting out a record, they would test it at Tracks to see the response that it got. So it very quickly got to be the reputation that the music that you will be hearing tomorrow, next month, maybe next year, is at Tracks today. And that became a major attraction. And what we did is we had perhaps 5 or 6 DJs that we rotated regularly, and 2 of them got to put their hits for on the back of the list. There were 25 most of the time. Let's see. This was, one of the music was John Holick, and another was Michael Gibson. Boy, those names from the past. And they had their Hot to Trot list where they were listing the records that to them were the top 25 that existed. Many people would look at the list and say, well, wait a second, I know what's number 1 on Billboard and that's number 1 on the radio. How come that's number 18 on your list? Well, it's falling off. It's old. We're playing the newer stuff. So the newsletter was an opportunity to put out our Hot to Trot list. We also had the front page, which was always a cover story, and almost always was talking about an imminent party coming up. It usually was a party that was going to be in the 2nd week of the month because we didn't want the news to get stale.
And it got mailed to people's houses, I see on the back here.
We actually had a larger distribution than out front. We printed 12,000, they printed 10,000.
Amazing.
And we would mail out about 4,500 of our Tracks Express, and we would distribute the balance in various gay business operations up and down Broadway through Capitol Hill and such, and anywhere else that was interested in them. And of course, we gave a ton of them away at our own door where we had the newsletter stacked up.
And how long were you guys producing a newsletter? Because Tracks doesn't have a newsletter now, right?
Tracks does not have a newsletter.
I guess it has an electronic. I get an email from you guys pretty regularly.
The technology has changed. When we did that, there was no such thing as Microsoft Publisher or computerized publishing.
You wrote many of these pieces, did you not? You wrote some of these pieces, right?
I wrote half of them. The other half was written by my general manager named Randy Hardwick, to whom I owe a great debt of gratitude. Randy was a phenomenal employee, and perhaps one of my best, as long as I don't have to rate him against Scott Kreutzer, who is the best.
So, a nice Brooklyn Jewish kid comes to Denver and publishes a gay club's newsletter. Yes? Writes stories called Women at Tracks. This is the front page. Headline. Women at Tracks. The response of Denver's women to their special night at Tracks, in addition to the weekend support they've given the bar, has prompted us to add more women-oriented functions. Can you talk a little bit about your women-oriented night? Because this is 83. How have you created community for the lesbian community here? Space for the lesbian community?
Tracks is a big club. Tracks had a capacity of 1,000 people. And it's not an easy thing to fill if you're going out and attempting to say, I'm going to narrow market. Most clubs tend to pick who they want their target audience to be. So if you're a drag bar, you market to the drag community. If you're a leather bar, you market to the leather community. Women's bars, black bars, Hispanic, whatever it is. I envision Tracks as being a bar for everybody. I didn't want to exclude any group for any reason of any kind, and we wound up getting a very substantial support from the women's community. We were open basically Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We had various themes that seemed to work fairly well. It was a Women's Wednesday, all ages was Thursday. Friday was party night without any special definition. Some people would call that straight night, but I'll give you a straight night story in a little while, but it wasn't. And then Saturday was basically open for everybody, and Sunday we marketed to the black community. And in the process of doing that, we were able to be quite successful. I mean, hell, we're still here. We must have done something right. But the women were thinking that they wanted something that was uniquely theirs alone. And we came up with an idea the last Tuesday of the month. It was a no-cover event, and it was staffed almost exclusively with women. Women were in the management that night.
Were they dressed in tank tops and topless too? No.
They dressed in everything. Those of you who come to Tracks now, we have a First Friday Women's Night that is promoted by Dee Dee Frame. She does a fabulous job, and Dee Dee is able to market across the entire women's community, and I'm proud to say that Tracks/Exto today is hosting the largest women's party in the country, possibly in the world. We regularly host over 2,000 women, and we have had as many as 2,600 women here for our First Friday event. Just a phenomenal event, and we have women of every size, shape, color, orientation. We have a lot of straight women come in here because it's the best party in town.
Exactly. So you ended up franchising Tracks, right, from Denver?
Well,
maybe I shouldn't use the word franchise.
Franchise isn't quite the word I would use. We expanded to Washington, D.C., and that was in 1984, and that in itself was a little bit of a story. I had gone there. My wife, Kay, and her 2 teenage daughters were interested in going out, see the nation's capital, go to all of the places that people had talked about and wanted to see, and I said, great, give me a chance to go check out some gay bars. I thought all I knew was what we were doing here in Denver, and it was kind of seat of the pants. We didn't really understand what worked or why it worked or how it worked. We just did it. It seemed to be fine. So I was going to go to Washington and go to all of the big city clubs and start picking up some good knowledge that I could bring back. And I remember after going to 3 or 4 clubs, I called Neil up, who was back in Denver. I said, Neil, you're not going to believe this. Not a single club here can hold a candle to Tracks. We have by far the best club around. And he turned to me and said, Marty, don't tell me you bought a club. I said, no, Neil, I just put a down payment on some real property. We're going to build our own.
So you built a Tracks in Washington, D.C.
We built the Tracks in Washington. I found the city block. This is Washington, 1984. The riots occurred in 1968, and Washington had not recovered. The building that I was in was partially burned in the 68 riots and was basically abandoned except for use as a Washington Star newspaper distribution center. It had been an auto dealership. And if you can picture some of these older dealerships that were built in the 20s, there was an area where there was a showroom in front, and then there was an area in the middle that served the business aspect with the desks for the people, with the bathrooms, with maybe a snack room and such. And then in the back was a big garage area where they serviced the vehicles.
Or a volleyball court.
That was outside. So I looked at the Washington property. I said, perfect. The showroom is the foxhole. The used car lot in back is the volleyball court in the outdoors area. The big garage area with the high ceilings and such is the high-tech, high-energy nightclub. And I can take Foxhole and Tracks and put them into one package and just dominate the market. I mean, they were horrible. Really bad. And the one thing that amazed me is I went from bar to bar and everyone was packed. I said, there's a need.
Right. And your club became instantly successful, right, once you opened it?
Instantly successful. We began a program called the Tracks Enthusiast Card. So if you had a card, you wouldn't have to wait in line, and we were going to market it for $100 for the card, and it would allow you to get in and get your a guest in also. And we decided that we needed to make a major statement, so we had a special $10 one night only party in which you can get your enthusiast card. You get in, pay $10, and get the card. And we were hoping for 500 people. After all, we were relatively unknown. 6,000 people got cards that first night. The bar closed. We were stopping serving alcohol, and there was still a line of about 1,000 people waiting to get in.
Wow.
And we stayed open till 7 in the morning to make sure everyone got their cards.
And then you ended up opening clubs in Tampa Bay and New York. Right?
Yes, Tampa, New York were 1987.
Mm-hmm.
And they were, by that time it was getting to be old hat, and I thought, oh.
You're now an expert in the gay club business.
In fact, after Washington opened, we looked at virtually every city in the country. I am certain I have been to more gay clubs than 98% of my gay customers have been to.
I have no doubt.
We made offers in LA and in San Francisco. The LA deal fell through because we couldn't meet the parking requirements. The San Francisco deal fell through because we couldn't meet the earthquake requirements. They are just so onerous, they're anti-business and just unable to do anything there. We looked carefully at Boston, came fairly close, and the closest of all that I came was a resort hotel, an old Jewish place. Some of you may have heard of the Seagull Hotel on 21st and Ocean, a block from the old Wolfies on Collins and 21st.
In Miami, you're talking about?
Miami Beach, yes. We were going to get a hotel there.
And what were you going to do with this old Jewish hotel?
Well, we were going to gut the kitchen area. As some of you may know, the Jewish hotels in Miami Beach had huge kitchen areas, and they would serve 3 meals a day. The staff must have been 1,000 people just working in the kitchen. And I was going to make that the massive Tracks Nightclub. And we had a design where we were going to put plexiglass over the swimming pool and have light show flashing through there. And
wow.
It was an exciting time. Every time I mention it to my wife, she gets really upset because there was a penthouse apartment that was on the top, and she says, I want that place to live.
Right.
But we couldn't agree on 3 simple words: good working order. I thought that meant they had to put a new roof on and fix the elevator. They said no. I dug my heels in the sand. They dug theirs. We never made a deal. And as I sit here, I'm sad. That would have been the best out of all of them. We missed the boat on that one. Sorry, Andy.
And then you could have been going to Miami, which wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah, I got a condo in Miami now. I wish
So you took care of it. You got the penthouse in the end. This is the mid-'80s, and it's the age of AIDS. It's the era of AIDS, and I'm wondering how your clubs responded with it, how you handled the clients, the customers dealing with it.
Let me first give kudos to my partner, Neil Feinstein, who came up with a phenomenal idea of bringing Tracks public. And we were going to add Jewish entrepreneurial spirit to the gay community. And we came up with ideas. For example, I was in serious negotiation with Niles Merton of The Advocate. We were going to merge The Advocate into our public company, so we would have nightclubs, we would have restaurants, we would have publishing.
What was the name of your company, by the way?
It was called Nemdeco.
And tell
short
them
for
why
Nemdegelt.
So
not that many Jews in the audience?
This is the old Brooklyn kid trickling out every once in a while. Nem the Geld, take the money, in Yiddish. But it just sounds like a company name, Nemdeco.
Nemdeco was our corporate name.
Brilliant.
We were in negotiation with Windjammer Cruises to have cruises. I was talking with a hotel on Duval Street in Key West. We had some really great plans, and it would have been most unique. I think it would have been a tremendous asset to the gay community. I think it would have been a tremendous asset to my pocketbook, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, not from my pocketbook standpoint, but unfortunately for the community, it turned out that this was the dawn of the disaster called AIDS. And we were opened in Washington when the first hint of it started coming out, and I would get some phone calls. Do your bartenders all wear rubber gloves? I'm sorry, sir, this is not the club you want to come to. Please stay away. Do you use all plastic glasses that are throwaway? Please don't come here. There was actually one time where there were some people protesting in front that homosexuality is the reason why AIDS existed. And of course, this is all at a time when we knew nothing about it other than it was predominant in the Haitian community, in the drug needle exchange community, and in the gay community. And there was the question, what was causing that? What was unique? What was consistent in all three of those communities that caused AIDS? I was contacted by somebody from the Blade, which is the Washington equivalent of Out Front, asking me if we sold poppers. Poppers is something that was pretty prevalent in the early 80s in nightclubs. It was a legal mixture of butyl nitrate, which tended, when sniffed, to make your blood flow a little bit more rapidly, and it would give you euphoria. So I said, yes, we do. And he says, do you know that there is talk that butyl nitrate is what's causing AIDS? What do you intend to do about it? And I'm pleased to say I think we were the first gay club that ceased selling butyl nitrate. We decided that we don't know what the cause is, but the mere fact that this might be a problem was enough for us to remove it from circulation within our club.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just trying to picture in this time of sadness, I can imagine, with people in your club, they're coming here presumably for relief. Like, I'm wondering if the atmosphere changed in the late 80s in terms of your customers.
We had a dramatic drop in business for a while, and people are resilient, and as they came to realize that maybe the answer is just safe sex, they started coming out again.
And you put condom machines where the butyl
No, we did not have a condom machine.
No condoms.
No, we handed out free condoms. You did not have to have a condom machine in our place. We had condoms on the bar.
That's great.
We felt that that was not only the responsible thing to do, but frankly, I hate to stand there and sound like I'm some great humanitarian. It was the right business thing to do. My motivation
having condoms
was all
on the bar.
So
tell me how having condoms on the bar was a good business decision. It brought people in the door.
Yeah. I look and see some people taking a handful of them, putting it in the pocket, kind of like the way I do at Mints in a restaurant.
You don't grab condoms off the bar? No.
One for now and one for later.
I'm not even touching that one.
And if you're 21 years old, 4 for later.
Okay, not touching that one. So how do we, I'm curious, it's getting late, and I actually want to bring us to how we ended up here in this place. So Tracks was still down near the tracks, across the street from Foxhole.
It's all Scott Crotzer's fault.
Uh-oh. Where is he?
I don't know where he is, but I blame him. The baseball park was being built, and our property became very valuable, and so Lincoln Properties from Dallas, Texas came in and basically bought out all the property in the area and put up some apartments. They're called the Metro Apartments down near the ballpark. And we were basically out of business at a time when, frankly, I was pretty burned out. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and it's a long time. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're flying from city to city to city and such. And it looked like a nice time to end it. We were still on top. We were still the top dance club here.
And this is the late 90s, early 2000s?
This is late 90s, year 2000. And so for about a year, we weren't doing much of anything. And Scott comes to me and says, you know, Marty, you've got a very loyal following, customer base. You've got very loyal employees that been here forever and ever, a long time. People, we see some of the same faces, been here 15, 20 years. Mm-hmm. He says, we've got all the equipment. It's all sitting in storage. He says, if I find a place, will you go ahead and build a new Tracks? You're going to find a place. It's going to have the requirements. It's going to have the high ceilings so that I could put a light show in and stuff. It's going to have lots of parking so I could fit 2,000 people in. It's going to be able to be a Tracks. Well, nothing could be a Tracks, so I'm not even going to call it Tracks. I'm going to call it Dream, which was a name that I thought would make some sense. And Scott said, yeah, I'm going to find your place. Calls me up one day, I found it. Sure, I'll humor him, I'll go there, but I'm retired, I'm not going to. I walked in, I said, holy shit. Oh. God damn you, Scott, what have you done to me?
Yes. And so how long have you guys been in this space now?
This space was called Dream for about 2 years, and people would come in and say to me, God, I wish there was the old Tracks was around. This is a nice club, but it's not the old Tracks. The old Tracks had the most phenomenal sound system you could ever imagine. And of course, I didn't have the heart to tell them that that phenomenal sound system was in our small room. The new room had a much better, bigger, improved sound system. And we decided to usurp the name Tracks again because it had that good reputation and such. This was the storage area. We would do all of our events and our whole promotions in just the other side. Mm-hmm. And this room just sat here and sat here and sat here until people started coming and saying, could we throw an event? Well, I don't have 2,000 people capacity.
Is that the capacity of the space?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what if we used your storeroom? Well, I got so much crap in there. Well, can't you put it somewhere else if the numbers were right? If the numbers are right, I can do anything. Well, it turned out that this room evolved into an extremely multifaceted room. Some of you might have been here last night where we had Drag Nation, which is probably the biggest drag show in the country. And the stage was actually on the other side, and there was a runway built and such, and the whole room looked completely different. We have hosted numerous things, the most successful being Democratic National Convention. We hosted the Recording Artists of America here with Kanye West performing live on this stage. We had the Google Vanity Fair party with a dozen Academy Award winners, including Susan Sarandon, Forrest Whitaker, Ben Affleck, Jennifer Garner, Chevy Chase, the list goes on and on and on. We just recently hosted the Microsoft annual convention here. The convention was in Denver and their major party was here. Delta had a travel agency convention. They also chose this spot. In fact, Scott is going to be scrambling to get this thing broken down. He's got another 3-4 day event coming up this week with McCallum Scotch tasting, in which everybody in the liquor business is going to be invited to taste the new McCallum Scotch product. We've had